Roy, that's going to be easy to follow. My mother said to me before I came up here, she said, "You're not singing this, are you?" I got to tell you, I was asked by Rabbi Silk to speak about what Emmanuel meant to my mother. She told me I had 5 minutes. So now, since I've seen what the rabbi does, we'll be starting on page 1. Now, but this was an assignment that was full of guesswork. Frankly, I never asked her what this place meant to her. Those of you who know me well understand that I'd never listened to my mother. And the fact that I'm here on this pulpit tonight with a speech that she hasn't edited is a testament to that. But I thought further about the facts that, frankly, I knew, and I realized that the answer was right under my nose. I can tell you what this synagogue means to my mother, and you heard it from Roy. It's family. I don't mean the genetic family. I'm talking about anyone that belongs to this synagogue is immediately part of her inside crowd. Everyone knows that when you enter her office here at Emmanuel, you quickly learn that she's the Jewish equivalent of Don Corleone from The Godfather. Now, let me set the stage for how our family got so big. As World War II ended, the future for Judaism here in Houston was bright. Rabbi Kahn had returned from his stint in the service, and he and some other influential Houstonians, including my grandparents, were gathering together to outline a new path for us. This synagogue named Emmanuel was taking shape in this new building, and young Myra Blum was already becoming a fixture in its hallways. My mom's parents were two people who frankly lived as the real-world equivalent of Archie and Edith Bunker. But these two people saw the community involvement as a non-negotiable requirement for their children. Their influence had great results because my mother and her siblings each became sisterhood or congregation presidents. And even her sister Davna married Uncle Eddie, who became a president of this congregation. All of this generation set a great example of service and provided a great foundation for how we should live our lives. I'm honored to have followed in their footsteps. But let me return to my mother for a second. Just 16 years after Emmanuel was founded, my mother left her stint in Norman, Oklahoma at OU and returned to Houston. According to my grandfather, when she wasn't married by her junior year, it was time for her to come home. By 1960, Mom met and married the ultimate contrast to her, my father, Joe Lipper. With Mom's influence, Dad became a singer of Hebrew lyrics in the Emmanuel choir, but didn't speak a word. Dad was Jewish, but he grew up in a house with a Christmas tree. But those contrasts aside, Mom and Dad clearly agreed on one thing: be Jewish. Raise your kids Jewish. Don't just join Emmanuel, but belong to the synagogue. And I don't mean you got to pray. You got to do something. And have Friday night dinner with your family every time you can. Although her siblings and parents had great influence on Mom's participation in Emmanuel, nothing compared to the influence from me and my brother. Less than 20 years after the Allied invasion on the beaches of Normandy, I was inserted into the battlefield that became known to many in Southwest Houston as the Maplewood Wars. Although he's a rabbi now, I remain convinced that my brother was transported from some alien world where points were scored by how much torture you could inflict on your sibling. I would have been 6'4". But I'll tell you, those fights had a good byproduct because my mother quickly realized that she could escape and come to Emmanuel anytime my brother and I were reenacting the Hatfields and McCoys. So, Mom did. By the early 1970s, my mother knew that my bedroom door was sufficiently hardened that David couldn't get in, and that, frankly, I could retreat in there because I was faster. Mom escaped our crossfire to 1500 Sunset and volunteered in every way that she could. She experimented with her new independence by working on shows at Emanu, becoming president of Sisterhood, and lending her creative spirit to this synagogue. Her participation was not for the money, but because she was having fun. This became her country club. I remember my mother humming show tunes around the house with her friends and looking for words so she could rhyme for the next round of lyrics. She even brainwashed me into the fold and had me helping out with the Israel Expo in '72 and the bicentennial celebration in '76 and many other ways. Before I could drive, my mother was perfectly comfortable with me and my 10-speed bike running all over Southwest Houston, especially if she was at Emanu. In the 1970s, we could get hardship driving licenses at 15, and that equated to my mother's complete freedom in '79. Everyone was a winner because I was out spinning my wheels, and Mom was at Emanu planning the next events and enjoying the company of her temple family. I loved those Tuesday night board meetings because it meant Dad and I could get chicken fried steaks. And I can't say that Emanu and Myra Lipper are synonymous because they aren't. But I can say that Emanu is a lot better off because of my mom. Many of the great programming ideas over the last 35 years came from my mother in some form or fashion. Her creativity is one of her greatest assets. And frankly, if you disagree with me, remember it's my speech. Now, history doesn't always repeat itself, even though that's an adage we often hear. I'm afraid in this case it's not going to. No one else can hold court in his or her office the way my mother does. No person will work 7 days a week, sometimes late in the evenings, and still make every event special because she truly loves what she does here. There's no paradigm for my mother or the times we had. People today just don't hum show tunes. But the variety shows are gone, and All in the Family is no longer quite as controversial. In the good old days, Saturday services used to be over by lunchtime, hint, and we had a receiving line where everybody shook hands. To quote one of my mom's favorite tunes that she always chanted around the house, those were the days, my friend. But some will say that Emanu has lost the magic it once had, and I've heard people say that the wheels are off the bus, but I'm not that negative. You just have to go back to the fundamentals that Mom has exemplified for us, and which exist regardless of your feelings about board members or rabbis or whatever is your issue of the day. You've got to be Jewish, you've got to raise your kids Jewish, and you don't belong to Emanu unless you do something at Emanu, and golly, have Friday night dinner with your family. The fact that both my parents were married here, my brother and I were married here, my son was bar mitzvahed here, and I've been a member here for apparently 50 years because that's how old I am. It's a lasting tribute to the influence of the Myra. And before I go, I'd ask for your help from this sanctuary. And I want everybody to stand up. If you've worked with my mother, if she's helped with your life cycle plans, if she's planned an event for you, planned your bar mitzvah, or if you'd just like to sit in her office and hear what she's going to say to you, thank you. And so I want to thank all of y'all for being a part of our family.